Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a late edition of Fire Up. Thank you for tuning into us so late tonight. We do apologize, but if you caught our Pundit show earlier, you know why, and it was a rocking and a rolling in the chat room there. And if you missed it, I'm sorry. Go check it out. Self-Lord Tribune YouTube channel. But we're gonna start talking tonight because the boys of summer are back. So I'll be honest with you, this is kind of it's not my favorite sport, but it was the sport my dad loved. My dad, and I kind of dedicate a lot of it to him. And I go back and reminisce about days when I was growing up. My dad actually was a school teacher. He was a high school math teacher, but so in his summers, he had time to do things. So what did he do? He worked for over 30 years with the Milwaukee Brewers as an usher. And so he loved baseball. And I can remember Easter Sunday, us sitting in the backyard at my grandparents' house, and we had it on the radio. If the Brewers were playing, we were listening. And so it brings back a lot of good memories. And so I really, this time of year is always something special for me. So it brings back some good memories. So look at the chat rooms already going. I love it, love it, love it. Thank you, Joshua. What's going on? William missed out on the last show. Good night, folks. Will was on the last show. Good evening, legendary night, Florida Tribune. Yes. So I'm going to start out with the boys of summer. My Brewers are doing well. They're 1-1. The team that I cover down here, that I take pictures for, Miami Marlins. They are doing horrible. 0-8. It's the worst start since a team made the playoffs last year. Till the worst start ever in the history of baseball. If they made the playoffs the year before, to start 0-8 this year, they're missing a lot. I mean, they're missing obviously some star pitching. Obviously, they have some key injuries in that area, but I don't think they've done enough to shore in the talent that they need to go far. Go ahead, Jeremy. I can already see you're trying to speak.
It's like they didn't surround Arias with enough talent in front and behind him to protect him in the lineup. He's trying to do it all on his own, and I think he's overthinking it at the plate because he's actually swinging at a lot of stuff he normally didn't. His plate discipline is lack. He's looking this year like Baez did last year. And Baez has actually been putting up numbers this year. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, he's not having a good year at all. Go ahead. Well,
and to make matters worse, I think I just read that Yuri Perez is going under Tommy John, which is not fun. He's a great young pitcher, and he's going through Tommy John. That's going to be.
Sandy just did that this last off season, so that means 2 down. And I know we're missing 2 other pitchers. They've been hit bad by the bug. They have.
Yeah.
The Tommy John surgery, that's actually the UCL surgery when they talk about it in football, correct? It's the same surgery. They just call it by the ligament that's hurt in football, right?
Yes.
Okay. I would agree with that. Tigers are doing pretty good there, Mr. George.
Yeah, they're 5-1. They split the doubleheader with the Mets today. They're playing pretty well, considering the fact that a lot of their stars are just hitting for nothing right now, including Torkelson. Riley Green finally had a home run today, but he's batting less than 200. Parker Meadows, the kid in the outfield, he's done nothing. The catcher, he hasn't done anything. It's the backup that really helped out. Yeah, Justin Rogers is I'm talking about. He's the starting catcher, but the backup, you're right, Jeremy, has done really well. Kelly. So I don't know. They're patching runs together, and they're getting help from maybe a few places they didn't expect to, but definitely need to get some of those bats going again. And all that being said, they're still 5-1. Crazy stuff.
Timely pitching.
Yeah, the relief pitching has been great, and the starting pitching. You're right, Jeremy.
So I just read something that I don't know that I know I've never read it before. And it has to do with a baseball game. It has to do with the New York Yankees and the Marlins. Because they actually play Monday, or is it Monday the 8th? The day of the solar eclipse.
Sunday.
They actually have
Monday.
not postponed, but rescheduled the game because it was scheduled to be at 2:05. But because that's the time when the eclipse will be going on, they've moved the game to 6:05 p.m. I don't know that I've ever heard of a baseball game being delayed or pushed back due to a solar eclipse.
And I completely understand why, because if you look at that band, it's a 60% eclipse. So that's enough that it's going to make the lights come on midday, and that's going to play with the shadows of the ball. And then when the eclipse passes and it goes to daylight and they shut off, it totally changes it again. And they talk about that at those dusk games, like the 7:05 starts during the summer, how the ball totally changes how it looks to a batter as the sun sets and the lights come on. And that is the main thing. I think why they did it. And I think they're doing it almost across the league. All of them are going to be moving their starts either earlier or later to avoid the eclipse. And I actually think it's a smart idea.
I do too. I mean, I can tell you that the first 15,000 fans to arrive will receive a Yankees solar eclipse T-shirt. The Cub has said.
Come on.
But again, here is one of the things that George, you I know have talked about this extensively, is how why they're giving games to teams that are up in the north where it could be snowing, cold this time of year, why they're not putting them in dome stadiums or playing them in the south more. Now I get solar eclipse is going to be for everybody, but you play in the Marlins with a roof, the solar eclipse isn't really going to affect it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is it gets very complicated because some of the teams have what you call traditional openers. Those two that come to mind right away are Baltimore and Cincinnati. And I don't know if there's some unspoken agreement somewhere among the league owners, but they always are home for the first series, always. And I don't like that because those two are cold cities. You had the Angels on the road playing. Yeah. And they should have been home the first weekend of the year, but you had a warm city team, if you will, the LA Angels playing on the road. But yeah, I think I don't think it's ever going to happen, guys. I really do. I can squawk about it. You can squawk about it, but I don't think the owners are ever going to change about it. Hey, if anybody's got a good opener, we all know it's the Tigers. It's a city holiday. It's a civic holiday. And Jeremy, you can attest to this. It's a party, man. It's a party because you're downtown. Even if you don't have a ticket to the game, it's still happening and it's a party.
Yeah, they advertised it as a free tailgate. The only thing you got to pay for is the food you want to eat or the drinks you want to drink. The tailgate is free to enter. So as long as you can find parking somewhere and you can get downtown, you can have a very good time cheap.
For sure.
That's
yeah.
funny.
But the Tigers, getting back to my point though, the Tigers are not one of those that's locked in because like this year, they sent them on the road. They all opened up in Chicago, then they opened up in New York. For their season opener, and now you got the first home game at Detroit tomorrow
versus the A's.
Yeah, those stumbling, bumbling Oakland A's.
They may suck versus every other team in the league, but they show up versus the Tigers every year. I don't know what it is, but we can't get a winning record against that team. I don't know, and not since 2012.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, let's face it. Last week when we were talking, there were some college basketball games that were being played at that time. We now know who's in the Final Four. It would be Purdue against number 11 seed North Carolina State. And we have Alabama versus number 1 seed Connecticut. So let's go around and everybody can give their predictions and talk a little bit about what they think about the games. We'll start with Will.
So I'm looking at the matchup. North Carolina State's had an amazing run. They beat Duke in the conference tournament, and then they proceed to win the conference tournament against their rival Chapel Hill, and they make their way to the Final Four against Purdue, which Purdue's on a revenge tour because Purdue lost last year in the first game against Fairleigh Dickinson. So I'm looking towards a matchup between Edey and the other big guy for NC State. I forgot what his name is. I always forget his last name. But it's gonna be a matchup of big men, and it's gonna be fun to watch. So, but my edge, I'm kind of biased because I'm a Tar Heel fan, but I'm sorry, NC State fans, you've had a great run. I think Purdue's just the better team. As for UConn, Alabama, UConn's having trouble getting to Arizona for the Final Four. Their travel issues have been bad. Like, they've ran into so many issues. But their coach is like, traveling ain't going to stop us from doing what we do. And Alabama beat my Tar Heels, but I just think UConn, because they're the defending national champion, and they've proved it all year they're the best team, that they'll beat Alabama. So I'll say UConn versus Purdue.
George.
Well, I was on a show, not tonight, but last night, and Scott was asking the predictions and all that. Nobody could believe what was coming out of my mouth because I'm picking out Alabama. And the reason is they have a very, very good up and down the roster, very good team. And I know they've had a few breakdowns defensively, and I know it's going to take a perfect game to beat UConn, but I'm kind of pulling for them. I know that Nick Saban left them this year, so the athletic program has kind of been flat. But boy, oh boy, the Crimson Tide are rolling right now in men's hoops. So I'm going with the upset there for no other reason than I really don't want to see UConn win it 2 years in a row, but that's just my personal preference. So take it for what it's worth. But yeah, this is new territory for Alabama in men's hoops to be in the Final Four. The other game, Will's referring to Burns, I believe, the big center.
Yes,
DJ Burns.
Yep.
Yeah, what a hell of a run he's had at NC State. This is going back many, many years in the 80s since they've been in the Final Four. So, but I'm still going to go with Purdue because I look at it this way, like kind of what you hit on, Will. I mean, they came so close. Last couple of years, they've had outstanding teams and outstanding players, and a lot of them, as you said, still play and want this championship really bad. And trust me, I saw that happen in football with the Michigan Wolverines and how all the guys wanted to stay, most of them, and come back to win all this past year, and they did. I think there's a lot of Purdue people that are doing the same thing. They just get this championship. Let's cut down that net. And but they're going to be both really good games, Candy. But my two are Alabama, Purdue, and then of course I got Purdue winning it all.
Okay, Mr. Jeremy.
I'm going to say what I said the last time we talked about the college thing, and that was at the Field of 32. UConn's winning the whole darn thing. There isn't a team in this thing that is anywhere near the class that they have. Klinger took over Illinois. I mean, the job they did defensively, holding a guy that had been averaging 24 points a game to 8 points. I don't see how anybody's beating them. I don't care how much of a lull and how good Alabama's playing everybody else. They haven't faced a UConn. UConn has got guys on the bench scoring in the double digits. But when Klinger's putting up 38, you don't really need the bench either.
I agree. So I'm
I'll
gonna
have
say
UConn winning it all, by the way. I forgot to mention.
But it's going to be UConn versus NC State because I hate Purdue.
so. I'm going to disagree with you, Jeremy, but that's okay because I'm a Big Ten fan. And sometimes when you're a Big Ten fan, if your team isn't in it from the Big Ten, you're going to stick with Big Ten team. And I think, like Will said, Purdue's got a chip on their shoulder from last year. They want, and Edie, he's on a mission. He wants it. So I think he is, ironically, I think they're going to beat NC State. Now, UConn, I think, is going to take it all anyways. So, but I find it kind of interesting that on the boys' side, NC State is playing a team and UConn is playing a different team. And the same with the women is that the UConn women are also in it playing against Iowa, and North Carolina State for the women are playing South Carolina. So the two schools have both the women and men's program playing in it, which I think is that's really great. I mean, it's great for those schools, great for those programs.
Mm-hmm.
Let's now switch to the women's side. North Carolina State's a 3 seed. They're playing South Carolina, who is a 1 seed. And then we have number 3 Connecticut going against number 1 Iowa. Any predictions? Because I know we don't normally talk a lot about women's basketball, but I'm going to start this time instead of with Will. I'm going to start it with George.
Oh, well, I think most of the United States would like to see young Caitlin in her senior year, her last college appearance, probably. That's to win it all for Iowa. The women Hawkeyes have had a fabulous year, as we all know. I think, but again, you're talking about a great program with UConn. And I don't know, that's going to be a tough game. I'm going to have to go with UConn on this one. I just think the Magic might run out this game for Caitlin. And then the other game, I'm going to go with South Carolina. I think they've got a little bit more balanced attack. And they're a good program, very good program. They've had a fantastic year, those ladies. And but overall, then I guess I'm going to go with UConn because I didn't pick them in the men's. I got to pick them in the ladies section, the women's finals. And hats off to Cleveland, Ohio, by the way, for hosting this weekend.
Yeah.
Because unlike the men, the ladies can't get a big stadium to play in. This is true. They are always in a regular, I call, arena. You guys know this, I'm sure. They're not in the big stadiums like the NCAA men. You have to have a size of Ford Field or the Superdome or Phoenix's new stadium or the Irving, the Cowboys home. But the women have but hey, their ratings are so good. They may review that policy and maybe someday try to have the women's Final Four in a football stadium. That's an aside. I just want to throw that in. But I'm going to go with UConn to win it all, Candy, and the women's.
Okay, Will, what do you think?
So before this show, I'm on a basketball show that talks basketball. Shout out to Meg Price, this tip off, where we preview men's and women's basketball, pros and college. I was born in Connecticut. This Iowa UConn game is a great game. You got Paige Beckers, my girl, on one side, against Caitlin Clark, who's probably the most dominant women's college basketball player right now and one of the greatest players of all time in women's basketball history and college basketball history. She drops triple doubles and stuff. And I like Caitlin too. Don't get me wrong. I got UConn because they got more weapons on their team. I do think Caitlin will have a good game, but I think even though this sounds biased because I'm from Connecticut, I got UConn winning that game because they just have more depth. On the other side, South Carolina. Dawn Staley is building what UConn had many years ago, a dynasty of winning multiple championships in a row. She did it last year. She was on. Actually, she didn't win it last year. I'm sorry. She won it 2 years ago. Last year, LSU won it. But she's created a program like a UConn, a dominant powerhouse, and she knows how to coach the team. In the final, I got South Carolina against Connecticut. Yes, I think Don Staley's a great coach, and Gino Auriemma is a great coach, and they're going to be butting heads, and it's going to be a close game through and through. But I'm hoping, if this isn't the year, I have UConn winning it. But if they don't win it this year, I guarantee next year, hopefully.
Okay, Jeremy.
I got Iowa versus South Carolina. I just Caitlin Clark with how she lost to LSU last year and got to put it to them this year. When that girl fouled out and she got all crying and belligerent about it, it was bad. So I got it going Iowa versus South Carolina. South Carolina is just too full of a team on the other side. I got Iowa going there. And I think South Carolina wins it all.
You know, Jeremy, for one time, I completely agree with you. South Carolina is on a ride. They haven't lost a game yet this year.
Now, do they call the women's basketball team the Game Hens instead of the Gamecocks?
No, unfortunately not.
They should. I'm just saying, it just doesn't sound right to say the female.
It doesn't. I agree. Because I think the women tend to see are called the Lady Volunteers.
Yeah,
right.
Most colleges do that. That's right. Well, like we have in Detroit, the Titans, and they're called the Lady Titans.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to change the nickname at all, Jeremy. Sorry.
They should have.
I think these will both be very good games. Now, I will say that I think this will probably be one of the best drafts for women's basketball than we've had in quite some time. I think there's a lot of players coming out of the draft and going into the draft. And now remember, the women play Friday and Sunday, and then their draft is already on Monday, I believe. So it's real quick. It's boom, boom, boom. But I think South Carolina is going to take it all. I do have Iowa beating Connecticut. I think Kim Malarkey said it best that and I realize Caitlin Clark is only one player, but Iowa does have other weapons. It's not just Caitlin Clark, but I think she's just too hard to defend. And I will say this, and Caitlin said this herself, that she'll know in the beginning, like when she gets out there on the floor, if the threes are flowing, she's hard to stop. And let's face it, that's pretty much about anybody. If you're hitting, if you're on, it's your night. You can't miss. It's kind of like a pitcher in baseball. If you know you're on, you're throwing those strikes and you're on. But you also know if you're not on, you're off. So, 100%. But I think Clark's going to bring it because I think she wants it, and she was disappointed last year. I think she's going to get it this year. Kudos to her because she got 2 years in a row Player of the Year. So good for her. Good for her.
She's awesome. Yep.
Yes. Jeremy, you want to cover a little bit of football news?
Sure, because this Undone came in and said Lions brought in Kool-Aid for a top 30 visit. And that's great. And it's doing their due diligence because no one knows who's falling at 29. No one knows if Brad Holmes plans to trade up, trade back, or whatever. So getting as many of those 4 or 5 guys that might be there at 29 in for a visit is probably a good idea. Because I don't think we have the ammo to trade up without costing future prospects or future draft picks. So I don't know if we trade up. Plus, right now, Cam Sutton's contract has not been voided by the NFL. And with him being released on an OYR on a misdemeanor charge rather than the originally felony charge that was listed, it may get held against the Lions, and that means it could cost us dead cap, which is why they kind of went stagnant in free agency and stopped adding a bunch of people. It's kind of why we matched the offer for Brock Wright, which actually was only 1.015 more than what he would have made anyways. It was kind of a no-brainer to keep him on the roster because he's our best blocking tight end and our tight end 2 on the roster. So to bring him back at $4 million a year over 3 years, when Everett just got signed to Chicago for $6 million as their 2, it's kind of good value. Let's see what else. And we brought back Kendall Vildor to be the CB5. It's depth piece. He'll be making the league minimum for the position.
How about kicking a 64-yard field goal?
It's not that he did it once, though. Everybody misses this point. There was a timeout called just before the snap was done, and the holder was lined up 3 yards further back than he needed to be, and the kid hit a 67-yarder with enough clearance that he could have hit it from 70. We're talking about a kid that hadn't made a field goal kick since high school. All he had done was kickoffs as coming off the practice squad in the NFL. And for his first 2 kicks to be 67 and 64 yards respectively and hit both of them, kudos to Jack Bates, who was actually brought in for a visit to talk about after the season's done for the UFL, because they can visit them, they can talk with them, they can't offer a contract, they can't contact the agent or any of that stuff till after the season's done. You're allowed to interview them, and that's it. So kudos to the Lions to bringing them in right away, because Michigan Panthers is actually this region's UFL farm, is how it works. The one that's over there near Philly is for all those teams over there. There's one in New York. There's one down in Houston. I believe there's one down. Isn't there one in Orlando or near Florida or Alabama?
I think there is.
Yep. And then they got the West Coast one. So that's how it works. Those are the regional, where those teams get to pick out of that pool of players on that team first.
And that the second time he kicked that 64-yard, it actually hit the net. So they're saying it would have been good for 5 or 6 yards even further back.
Right.
So
in other words, they're saying he's got Justin Tucker's leg for somebody that hadn't kicked
insane.
since high school in 2019.
If you are going through any kind of NFL withdrawal, go watch the UFL. Watch it.
Yeah, and you'll also be able to see what the kick return will look like, because that's the exact rules we're using.
Correct. Exactly. Okay, guys, I think it's time for My Town, because you guys all know I like that segment. So the segment of My Town means you get to choose a topic for either the town that you live in or the town you grew up with. Let's start with Smoking Jeremy B.
How about that? Last year, it took 11 games for Baez to get his 7th hit. And through 6 games, he has 4. It's amazing. It's like his bat learned how to find the ball. And the pitch that he did to drive Riley Green home for the only run in the game 2 today, it was actually off the plate away. And because he was leaned in with that crouch that he does and held through the strike zone with a level bat, he poked it right over the second baseman into right center and driving in Riley Green from third after the errant throw when he was stealing second base. So he got a stolen base and an extra base off of a single. And it's just been an amazing run. Tarek Struble looks as good as he was, and Casey Mize was electric earlier. I mean, his stuff was good.
I love Casey Mize. He's fun to watch.
I mean, he's actually added velocity since his surgery, and he actually rehabbed and gained the weight and got better mechanics. He's actually gained 2 miles per hour on every pitch except his curveball.
Wow.
If he can get that, he wants to get that 2 miles an hour on his curveball because it'll be more effective because of the pitch rate and the spin rate at that miles per hour. It's supposed to add anywhere from 4 to 6 inches more of movement.
Okay, Mr. Will.
So in my city, Charlotte, North Carolina, as we know, we have heard that Hornets coach Steve Clifford is going to be stepping down at the end of the season, and we'll move over to the front office with the team. My thoughts is it's his second stint with the team. I was never a big fan of him. He was mainly the defensive coach both times with us, and he's going to the front office. Yes, I'm excited to get a new coach, but I don't personally. I like our new front office. It's a young face. I think the guy's like 35 something years old, but honestly, I'm not excited about that. I was never really a big fan of Mr. Clifford at all. Don't get me wrong. You're an NBA coach. You're on the highest level of coaching basketball. Just never was a huge fan of him. And as we previewed earlier, in the state of North Carolina, we got two teams in the Final Four, NC State women, who are playing South Carolina, and NC State men, who are playing against Purdue. So the state of North Carolina is happy. So that's what's going on in my neck of the woods.
Okay, Mr. George.
Well, Jeremy took my Tigers thunder. He took my Detroit Lions thunder. So, hey, all I got left is the Detroit Red Wings. But that's not a bad story at all. But listen to this. There are, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4 teams within 2 points of each other for the final Eastern Conference wild card berth. Right now, you got the Islanders with 83. You got the Capitals with 82, the Red Wings with 82, and the high-flying, they've won 3 in a row, Pittsburgh Penguins with 81. And despite what Ralph says about his Penguins, they are fast and furiously trying to make the playoffs. But getting back to the Red Wings, very important win the other day on the road, playing the Tampa Bay Lightning and defeating them. Tampa Bay, of course, owns the first wild card spot. With 93 points. But right now, the prognosticators are giving Detroit I think it's around a 48% chance of making the playoffs. And they're basing that on the fact that the Red Wings have a really tough schedule. They've got the 82 points. They're on pace for 90 points, but even 90 may not be enough. So,
Right.
for example, this Friday, tomorrow, you got the Tigers opening up, and then across the street, you have the Red Wings hosting the New York Rangers. Very, very important. Every game's important. Every play is important. Every shift, as they say, is important. So the Red Wings sitting there with a 47% chance to make it. I still like their chances of making it. The problem is there's a lot of other teams too that are in the contention for the last, like I said, Eastern Conference playoff spot. But it's been a really good year. The Red Wings have done very well. Steve Yzerman made some great trade acquisitions and free agent signings, and they've really, really improved their offense this year. Goaltending is still a little bit, suspect, but they're trying to get by with the best they can in that position. So that's about it on me. The Red Wings, and this is a great point of discussion because it hasn't happened in many, many years that we're still talking about making the playoffs, and here it's already April. It's a good.
Well, a lot of that has to do with how they played in March, George. I don't know if you realize this, but the Pistons won more game in March than the Red Wings did.
No, I didn't know that, Jeremy.
Yeah, they went 3-11, and the Pistons went 4-12. That's disgusting. To be where they were, they had the second wild card locked up to lose that many games. But the reason why they're only at 47% is because Pittsburgh and the Capitals have 2 more games to play after the Red Wings are done. So even if they all end up tied at the end, all the other people do is have to have one tie.
Yeah. And
And
get
it's
that one. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's why it's 47%. Otherwise, it'd be 50%.
Yeah.
Okay, well, on to mine. And mine is kudos to the Milwaukee Brewers. And the reason why I'm saying kudos to the Milwaukee Brewers is because you allowed your famous announcer to call opening game. Bob Uecker was back at American Family Field once again to broadcast the Milwaukee Brewers home opener. He is 90 years old. This will be Uecker's 54th season broadcasting Brewers baseball, though he has already limited himself to home games for the last several years. Ueck is very focused on always being at a Hall of Fame level. Brewers principal owner Mark Antonazio said before the Tuesday's game, he doesn't just want to be in the booth to be in the booth. He's very mindful. He said, Mark says to him, you don't have to do play-by-play for all 9 innings or 7 of the 9. You can do less. Bob Uecker grumbles at that idea. You can flip roles. You can play and then do color. He doesn't want to talk about that. And so it starts. Bob Uecker behind the microphone. Uecker became the voice of the Brewers back in 1971 and has been part of their broadcast team ever since. He regularly makes appearances on the field and in the locker room, conversing with the players and coaches. He celebrated when they won the NL Central title. He used to play baseball. He played in the majors from 62 to 67. He played with the Milwaukee Atlanta Braves, the St. Louis Cardinals, and the Philadelphia Phillies. He worked as a national color commentator for ABC and NBC baseball telecast and earned fame beyond that of a usual broadcaster because obviously he's made late night talk shows, beer commercials. He did the movie Major League. He also starred in Mr. Belvedere, an ABC sitcom that aired over 100 episodes. He is Mr. Brewers, Mr. Milwaukee. Kudos to him. He is a Hall of Famer broadcaster already. I hope he goes on for years to come because when you grow up with one broadcaster that you grow up and you love, you want to hear him forever. Let's face it, there's famous ones all over. Every team has had them. Tigers had Ernie Harwell, that everybody knows. That Vince Scully called how many
Dodgers,
games?
yep.
Some of the big name ones. So kudos that he's still at 90. Feels good enough that he can call games. Let him call games as long as he wants.
Talking about Bob.
Yeah, he's a great guy, a great announcer. It's funny when you mentioned about that ABC because I remember they used him as Monday Night Baseball on ABC many years ago before ESPN started doing Sunday nights. And Uecker was in Detroit, I believe, for several games involving Mark the Bird Fidrich, who, as you guys know, in '76 turned the baseball world upside down with his antics and winning 19 games. But yeah, Uecker, I remember him coming into town here to do not only the Brewers, but the Monday Night Baseball games.
Do you realize he doesn't even have a contract? He just does it.
Wow.
You know what I love about Bob?
Don't get me wrong.
Bob Uecker. My favorite memory of him is always going to be from the Major League franchise when he was on there and he was playing a lush that hated watching the Indians lose all the time. And he gets to the end of the show. He goes, "Don't forget to come out tomorrow night for what was it? Old Timers Night. Anybody who was alive the last time the Indians won a World Series, they get in for free."
I love Uecker. He's great.
The only thing I want to add, though, that I feel remiss. We had a bench player outscore every player offensively for the season in one game in a loss for the Pistons. Malachi Flynn scored 50 points versus the Atlanta Hawks, and we lose by 8. When your bench player outscores the entire other team's bench, you should not lose. Kudos to him, but it's the 8th most by any Detroit player in history. It's also the most by any bench player in the NBA's history.
Yeah. It's insane.
So
Will, okay.
to answer one that said 0-16 Lions or this year Pistons more disappointing, if you look at what they were projected at the start of the season, you would have to say the Pistons are the most disappointing because they were supposed to be a borderline playoff team, and they're scraping the bottom of the barrel for a second year in a row. Let's hope that the draft lottery don't screw them out of whoever it is. I think it's that Aaron Sarf out of France that's the big number 1 pick this year. Hopefully we don't get screwed out of him this year.
Okay, well, let's call this a night. Let's wrap this show up. Will, how can everybody find you or get a hold of you?
You guys can find me Wednesday nights on. God, everything's opposite. I always forget. Let's just say Jeremy's channel, Jeremy B's channel, Kneecap Fighting with the Motor City Lions. You can find me there Wednesday nights. It's the NFL Roundtable where we talk about NFL news, Detroit Lions news, and we do a mock draft every so often. Thursday nights, you can find me on the Sip Off, hosted by Megan Price and her co-host Jennifer Lewis. And you can find me here on Thursday nights with these guys, plus Ralph Williams. Ralph, hope you're doing well, sir. And on Friday nights, I'm back on Jeremy B's channel with Detroit Lions Fan Cave Chat, where we talk Detroit Lions, and we also do mock drafts as well. And Jeremy also has a morning show. I'm not part of it, but his co-host Von Doom is. Check out their morning shows and their night shows. Yes.
George, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, I like to know, Jeremy, how much did you pay Will for that? That paid commercial.
I didn't pay him a dime, but I love it.
Nothing.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot. So you can get a hold of me at Yahoo, gicorn@yahoo.com. You can also find my columns on the South Florida Tribune and the Sideline Sports Network. I write along with Jeremy for Motor City Journal. And Jeremy's. Yeah, thank you, Jeremy, for the reminder. And Candy. No, this way.
Yeah, there it is.
Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the air. You'll find Ernie Harwell. That Candy mentioned in there. Scott Moyroth is in there as well, along with names like George Kill, Van Patrick, George Blaha, all the great announcers we've had in Detroit. So that book, there's a link to that book at the end of my column. And I'm also on Twitter, SandGSports99. Send me a note. Let me know how you're doing and what we can talk about in sports the next time we're on. Part of the 108 Stitches crew and also Fire Up series, as well as Pundit and the Sports Exchange. Candy, Scott, Jeremy, you guys are all doing great. Will, with all your appearances and your networks and your great programs. I really mean that sincerely. I'm very proud of all of you. You're welcome.
You're muted.
Jeremy, how can we watch you?
Well, you can find me right here on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel, Tuesdays, possibly Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Whether it's Fire Up, Inside the Pigskin, who knows what else I'll be on. But you will find me here whenever Scott needs me. You can also find me on my channel, which is Kneecap Biting with the Motor City Lions, where I have Lions Talk with Smokin' Jeremy B and Von Doom Mondays through Fridays at 11 a.m. Monday nights, it's Mock Draft Monday because, the draft's coming up and there's nothing better to talk about once the news slows down, especially now that free agency is done as of yesterday at 4 p.m. So it's going to be a little slow rolling, but we're going to keep it going however we can. Wednesday nights, as Will mentioned, is the NFL Roundtable Talk, where we talk about the 3 biggest NFL news and whatever Lions news is out there. And then the Lions Fan Cave Chat on Fridays. All those shows show at 9 p.m. And D-Lo says it for us. I will be on Pundits. Yes.
Yes. So Monday nights, our 108 Stitches baseball talk, typically around 8:30 ish. Tuesday nights, Inside the Pigskin around 8:30ish. Wednesday nights, Motor City Mad Mouth show anywhere from 7:30 to 8. And then 9 o'clock is Sports Exchange, where we talk about any kind of sports. You never know what we might be talking: basketball, baseball, hockey, football, maybe even cornhole. You just never know. Thursday nights are Pundit's Pundit and then Fire Up. And we do apologize again that this is running so late tonight. We appreciate all the people that have been in the chat room and commented both on Pundit's Pundit and yet still on this show tonight. If you want to hear the podcast version, if you're an audio person, you find yourself in your car and you can't be watching us, click on iHeartRadio, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to any of our shows. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Jeremy and George both write for us. Yeah, I can't get it right either. But you can check out their articles. You can check out Scott's articles. You can check out pictures that I take. I take sports photography, so you just never know what you're going to see on there. What else? Did you subscribe to our channel? If you haven't, you should. And if you haven't subscribed, if you subscribe to ours, you also should subscribe to Jeremy's and everybody else that's been one of the spokespersons on our station, because we appreciate everybody that comes on our station, and we hope you do too. There is also a book right there. My husband, Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Mad Mouth, wrote it. Lessons from the microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Kindle. Get your copy today. Again, guys, thank you for allowing me to share the airwaves with you guys, and you guys staying up late and coming on with me. Jeremy, you take us home.
Try every day to be a better person than you were the day before. It's the only way to make the world a better place. Starts right here. Much love to all of you.
Much love. See you next time. Enjoy March Madness.